Hello, everybody. It's once again that time of the week. What time of the week is it? Well, it's that time we come onto your radio dial. This article from The Roots that I think is really important to frame all this with. Um, Hold on, where are
I mean, I was gonna speak on Tucker Carlson talking about vaccine requirements are medical Jim Crow. I did want to speak on that, but I felt like it was very. I feel like if I have to explain how dumb that is, that I would lose brain cells. Like,
we? Yeah.
so there are some other stories that I do want to talk about.
I think let's lead off with this one, and so I'm not going to read too much from it, but I wanted to bring this up because especially we were talking last week about kind of how propaganda can whack, can impact support for BLM, and there's actually a study that just came out that showed that one, white people need to do better, but so uh, basically, this article goes on to say, um, when the country witnessed George Floyd's murder, millions took to the streets, offered their support for justice and equality. Corporations changed their policies. Individuals joined the movements. Uh, and then, this multiracial outpouring of sympathy and solidarity transformed the country. And then white people went back to sleep. And according to this article, that realization is not an opinion, it's a factual statement based on the research and analyses of multiple organizations. Um, and the studies are based on things that show that the vast majority of white people didn't just not do anything. According to stuff like math and science, levels of white support are lower than they were before demonstrations swept the country last summer. So, according to a review of pledges compiled by Creative Investments Research, businesses have donated less than 1% of the money that they actually promised. And in a review of investors' meetings and earnings call, Cintio noted a tenfold increase in mentions of systemic racism and Black Lives Matter before it returned to previous levels. In fact, many agreed to diversity training but refused to release data on employee demographics or pay equity. And recent polling numbers show that support for BLM has severely declined. Despite the litany of evidence, a May 21st PBS NewsHour poll insinuates that most white people still don't believe Black people are treated differently by law enforcement officers. But when analysts examine the data, it shows that ethnic minority support for the movement and for other key indicators for racial justice are higher than they were before George Floyd's death. However, white people's support has declined to levels lower than they were a year ago. And um,
I mean, a lot of that comes from media propaganda, and media manipulation of facts. I mean, when you hear that cities are being burnt down, and no, cities are being burnt down, and these protests are violent, even though 97% studies have shown that 97% of Black Lives Matter protests, especially during the height of everything, were non-violent, and a lot of the agitators that were a part of said uh, that did cause said violence. A lot of the violence was the police being violent towards protesters, or people like cops and other agitators like the Proud Boys and others would be in the midst of the protest doing violent stuff. These are not That's not a joke. That's not a punchline. It's real facts.
Yep,
And
there's actual like leaked stories of like Boogaloo Boys literally planning like property destruction so they could get escalate situations. And I don't want this
I
to
mean, that
turn to a
happened in
whole like
Kalamazoo.
ho hum thing. Yeah, it did. It did. There were reports of that kind of activity, and there's a lot of suspicion that the rock thrown through the city hall window was an outside agitator because it didn't look like anything a local BLM person would have put on a rock. And it was also very similar to what a lot of these other agitators were doing in other cities around the country. Now, again, it's not like I don't want to, get get all concerned trolling about like, rioting and property destruction. Riot is a language that we have heard, but it is worth noting that even if you're going to get real, the demonstrations last year really were not that bad, especially compared to some riots we've seen historically. It was just a lot of people were involved.
I mean, yeah. Do we want to compare the number of cops that were killed and or the number of cops that were injured and killed compared to how many compared to the white supremacist violence in this
That
country that has
important
killed
fact to
cops?
bring up. Millions of people demonstrate against police brutality all over the world. Not a single dead cop. A bunch of angry white people invade the Capitol, and a bunch of them get injured, beat up, and there's a couple of deaths.
And cops get killed.
Yeah.
Cops got killed. We are not allowed to let that go. They have feared mongered about Black Lives Matter all this time, forgetting the fact that at the Capitol riots, they murdered cops.
These people with the Blue Lives Matter flags. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, those people.
You cannot make that up. And when Matt Gaetz, and it goes back to a story that we were talking about earlier, when Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene was saying that the Second Amendment is not made for hunting, it wasn't about sports and hunting. It was about taking back our government from taking back their government if need be. If need be, he said, if need be, to take back our government from our tyrannical government. Who do you think they'll be shooting at first? Who do you think they will be pointing those guns at? They're not pointing it at us. They won't be pointing it at the citizens. They will be pointing it at cops, at the military. What's more disrespectful? Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, or what the rioters did to the Capitol Police and what they are planning to do with their weapons to take back their government?
Yeah, because again, police abolition is about like, we would like cops not exist. We would like you to quit being a police officer, but I'm not going to be like, my president didn't get reelected, so I am going to beat you up. That's
yes,
dumb. Yeah. And you know what? I'm gonna say, like, hey, if an unjust government needs to get overthrown, cool. But it's like I said, what was it? Overthrowing the government for good reasons is good. Overthrowing it for stupid reasons is stupid. And I can't think of a reason more stupid than keeping a orange billionaire in office. But
yeah, I mean, so that story, that right there, of BLM, of white people not supporting BLM, and I want to ask them, do they think that Black people all across this country, all of us were lying when they said the police abuse us and the police treat us differently than they treat other people? After the fact that we had literally had the 100-year of Black Wall Street being burnt down by white mobs, while white police officers did nothing to protect these American citizens. Outside of that, after the Rodney King, after the '96 Detroit riots, right? After the Rodney King video that came out, Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, Sandra Bland. Everybody likes to say Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, and we always forget to say Sandra Bland didn't kill herself either. But police, Black people, Black and white people. There was a story of last week of a white man that was in police custody. And the video came out. There were 6 officers on his body. He was yelling to them that he could not breathe. They stood on his body for 6 minutes and he died. So it's not just that when Black Lives Matter is saying, or when we talk about the defunding of the police departments, we're saying these things because we're not just trying to protect our community. These things also will happen to everyone else. And yeah.
And I think it's even more alarming, like this perception gap from reality. There was actually an article that dropped from The Guardian last week that shows like, not only are, police killing people of color, but at significantly higher rates than originally thought or reported. I'm not going to go like super deep into the article, but we've got this report um, uh, from several, the Raza like database project, and several others. And according to the report, the actual number of police killings for 2020 was around 2,134, which is well over 1,000 more than what the Guardian reported for that same year. And that same discrepancy is seen in almost all the data of every year since 2014. As a result, the actual number of Latinx and Black folks killed by police is actually about 25% higher than normally reported, according to the project. Meanwhile, a closer inspection of the number of victims whose ethnicity was listed as unknown revealed that the number of Asians and Pacific Islanders killed by police increased by an astonishing 600%, from 217 to more than 1,400 since just 2014. And it basically shows that United States police are killing significantly more people than previously thought, and way more people of color across a much wider spectrum of ethnicities. And again, like contrasting this story with the one we just talked about, where the reality is even worse than even like people who were critical of the police originally suspected. While the vast majority, maybe not the vast majority, but a larger plurality of white Americans think the problem is exaggerated. So that's
a lot of that comes from media perspective. How many times did you see Tucker Carlson or MSNBC and everybody blaming the victims of police brutality for their reaction to injustice in our system, from Bokum John being killed in his own house, from police officers trying to say that, or George Floyd's the police department trying to say that it was the crowd that made the police officer scared, and that was the reason why he stayed on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Like, it's seeing the violence with our own eyes, and then us being told by the media and everybody else that that no, you don't believe what you're seeing. Don't believe your lying eyes, right? But and that actually ties into a story that I wanted to bring up, because some body cam footage just came out from a situation that happened in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and this story is insane. It's absolutely insane. So I'm gonna read. So I'm going to be reading from CBS News. Baton Rouge police officer strip searches a 16-year-old teen. That's not. Wait. It gets worse. It gets worse. So New Year's Day, minutes after being pulled over by the police on New Year's Day, Clarence Green was standing in the street behind behind an SUV with his pants down and his underwear exposed. The officers was groping him in public, searching for drugs. You think this story? Okay, so this 16-year-old kid and his father is in the car, and they are going back home, and the police says that their car was suspicious, was tied to some suspicious activity in the area, or whatever the lie is that they said. Let me actually read from the article. And after minutes of this, they have the father and the son out of the car, and they are stripping them down, to see if they had drugs. You think that will be worse? That one, they don't have probable cause for searching them. They don't have a warrant, nor do they have probable cause of their car being tied to any drugs, which it wasn't. But um, they then after violating their human rights, these police officers go to the suspect's house. They break into their house and conduct a search without a warrant again to make sure that they did not have anything that was going to put them in more trouble. The number of violations here, and this happened last year. This happened in 2020, so this happened last year, New Year's Eve. None of these police officers got fired or arrested for sexually assaulting a teenager, for violating their parents' rights, and then breaking into their house without a warrant. And it's been a year, and we wonder why people are mad and would want to go in the streets or say that maybe we should defund the police in civil asset forfeiture laws, in the drug wars, in these type of policing policies where there's no accountability when people are violating your American rights. I feel like I'm missing something, but I feel like the family filed a lawsuit, and it was for a $35,000 settlement to the family because of this. I think it should have been higher. I think those police officers' pensions should have been taken. The pensions of the police officers should have been taken. I think that the police officers and the police chief who hid this body cam footage, I think all of them should be fired. Every single one of them should be fired. That's disgusting. You're muted.
It comes from the backdrop too of like, again, we've got these anniversaries coming up, and like we're just about a year away from what happened with George Floyd and all of the rebellions that popped up after that. And again, even in that week where the trial was captivating everyone, we had like police killings just happening almost like every other day. Well, I mean, every single day, I guess I should say, like police killings that showed up in the national news. But again, I know we're going to sound like a broken record, but
sorry, go ahead.
We're going to sound like a broken record, and we say this on the show all the time, but like America is like the only place where this kind of stuff happens. Like you look at comparable countries around the world, like they have like police killings like less than a dozen a year, like on average. United States talking like $2,000. And one other thing I want to bring up too is like a lot of times when we talk to white people, some if they're not completely like standing cops, they might bring up like, well, more white people actually get murdered by the police. And like again, I want to remind people how math works. There are more white people in the United States as a total. So yes, just the way statistics work, more white people are going to end up getting killed. But at the same time, this always ends up like as like an excuse or like a gotcha for people who don't support BLM, which makes absolutely no sense. If you are using that as a gotcha, then you have to understand that police are killing a lot of people, and you should go protest with the BLM. Like, what are you doing? You're thinking like,
I mean, the idea is that. So the question that I would like to ask those people, I was like, so you're okay with cops indiscriminately killing innocent Americans? So you're okay with them lying on the police report, like they lied in the last story that we talked about, and how they lied in this story that I want to talk about right now as well. Also, coming from the great state of Louisiana, the state that looks like a boot, and these people should have got the boot. State police officers, this is coming from the AP News. State police officers um, were captured on body camera video punching, kicking, using a stun gun, and dragging a a black man, um, dragging him by his feet, so his face is being dragged on the ground. This happened in Louisiana, and the Associated Press finally got this footage. This footage came out 2 years ago. Um, of this man fleeing from police officers in a high speed chase. He surrenders peacefully. They beat this man to death so much that on camera they're using hand sanitizer to clean the blood off of themselves, and they tell the family after they've beaten this man to death that he hit a tree, and that's how he died. The body cam footage finally came out, and it showed that what they put in the police report and the lie that they told to the family doesn't match up with what was on the body cam footage. Again, I want to ask these white people who for some reason don't believe that black folks are treated differently. If the police are lying on a police report and the body cam footage they have to hide because they're afraid of being transparent on what's going on, why do you think that the black folks are lying or that Americans are lying when the people who have the footage to show the truth are hiding it? Okay. The leak footage, again, this is coming from the AP. The leak footage shows how Randall Green was killed by the police, and how the police lied to the family, lied to the family and covered it up. The family is now following lawsuits after the AP finally got a chance to release the footage. This happened over 2 years ago. So this family thought the last 2 years that what the police told them, the police lied to the media, and that none of these officers were held accountable for the beating of this man. So this is my thing when it comes to solutions. Can police training and things of that nature change the culture of policing? Honestly, in my opinion, no. But I do think there are some things that can help. I think that we care more about consequences than training, and I do think training will help when it comes to de-escalation and how to deal with human beings when they're having a bad day. I think those things do help. But consequences. If we get rid of qualified immunity, so that these police officers don't feel like they have the freedom to lie. They took a man's life and then lied about it to hide their crimes. If we took away qualified immunity, if we took away if we actually applied what this was a murder. This was murder. This like you want to say it wasn't first degree, but you want to say it was second degree murder. You can say that. They didn't intentionally plan to kill him. I don't agree with that because they literally dragged him by his legs, dragging his face on the ground, stunned, beat, punched him until they had to clean the blood off themselves. So and then they lied about it. They should be held accountable to the fullest extent. If I was to do that to a citizen, if I was to do that at my job, I work in a factory. If I was to do that at my job, I was to beat somebody to death with with one of the with one of the fixtures that I have at my factory job, and then clean up afterwards, and then tell the authorities, and then not show. We in my company did not show the footage to the authorities or to the police for years afterwards, and we lied to the family that of the person that was murdered. I would go to jail. That factory would be held liable and accountable.
Yeah.
Keep that same energy.
Mhm.
But yeah.